if there's one story that is maybe capable of pushing Okada and Ospreay's departure from New Japan out of the headline spot, it is all of the turmoil going on in Stardom in the wake of the announcement that Rossy Ogawa was being fired by the company which he helped create for poaching talent for a new upstart Joshi company, which he seems to be involved with. There are very, very few English-speaking people on Earth, I think, better suited than Karen to speak to this. So please, Karen, for my sake and the sake of everybody else listening, what is the latest with Stardom and Ogawa's potentially Misawa-esque exodus going on right now?
You thought you had a couple of months before we had to do another lesson in Stardom, huh, Bruce? All right, so John and Wade kind of touched upon it earlier in the week as the news was breaking. Last Sunday, a week from today, actually, a week ago today, Stardom had their 13th anniversary show, Supreme Fight in Osaka. Great show, big happy family photo in the ring that became this week's cover of not Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Sorry about that. Weekly Pro Wrestling, the one I don't work for. And then the talents were brought to the backroom locker room. Rossy was brought back there and they terminated his contract in front of everybody and put him in a cab and sent him on his way without the press present. Then the following day, a couple of interviews came out. One was with the new president of Bushi Road / the Stardom branch of Bushi Fight, Taro Okada. And it kind of set a bit of panic internationally as machine translations included the phrase Rossy was trying to poach talent, which is why he was let out of his contract early. And then, Rossy also did an interview with Tokyo Sports and gave his side, and that, for some reason, didn't seem to get nearly as much traction. So I'm kind of here to unpack a little bit of that. But before we dive into it, first and foremost, I want to say more than anything else, I am pro talent. So I want anyone who stays in Stardom, I want them to succeed. I don't want to see Stardom shut her down, and I don't think it's going to. And anyone who chooses to leave, they are adults. They are of their own volition and choice to do so. You can't be mad at Stardom talent choosing to leave while Okada and Ospreay are getting signed away. Bottom line. Also, please, everyone who supports Stardom, stop infantilizing the women and thinking they can't think for themselves and that Rossy has them all brainwashed. They are adults. Some of them in the past year have expressed their distaste for what is happening in Stardom. And it's been frustrating because I think it's very easy to paint Rossy as the villain because he's not fighting back about what's being said. If we're going to draw a parallel to New Japan, the good old Gaijin unrest was the reason why Harold May got fired, and then Okada and Jay White and Ospreay leaving New Japan was why Obari got fired. But none of those had a significant enough impact on New Japan. The fact that Taro Okada went, I'm going to use his full name just so people don't confuse it with Kazuchika Okada because he is not the current president of Stardom, and that is not his next career move. Was going as far to say there are enough main event talent or popular talent with championships that if everybody leaves, we may have to shutter Stardom. And that is what set a firestorm this week. For those, I typically am not dialed in to the Wrestling Observer, but earlier yesterday, a friend of mine recommended that I listen to this week's Pacific Rim podcast with Jim Valley and Fumi Saito. A lot of what I may say is going to mirror what is said in that podcast because it makes me feel good to know that I'm not crazy. But if you have the time, it's about an hour plus, but they spend a significant part filling in the gaps, especially because one of the biggest problems that we have when it comes to Western media covering Stardom, because they don't usually or regularly deal with the press, we have to rely on largely Dave Meltzer and what information is put out there because they don't have regular English commentary. They don't have an English language website. They do have an English language Twitter account, but it is the information that's released there is few and far between to if you want to compare it to how New Japan Global's done. The information disclosed is very, very minimal. So sorry, it's really a lot. For those, when it comes to Western talent or a Western promotion having a big change, typically when someone's finally free of their contract, they may go on podcast or, there'd be a big tell-all. Japanese businesses don't tend to run that way. So we honestly, we may never know really what the full story is unless somebody has the gumption to write up a book deal or line up a big interview and basically disclose the actual truth, because there's three sides to every story: one side, the other side, and the actual side. So um one of the things that I'm gonna get real with everybody about Stardom not participating in Forbidden Door or sending talent to AEW. For those, if you are in a relationship or want to be in a relationship with someone, if your partner, I'm gonna put it in basic terms, if your partner cared, they would. If Stardom wanted to participate in AEW programming, they would. The fact that they haven't means that they are not interested right now. So
Just to
it,
quickly
then
interject there, do you think
yeah.
that that is because TK's very kind of off the handle tweets about this prompted more speculation and I think confusion there. Do you think that that was that a question or an issue that was Rossi's call?
I honestly I don't think it was, because when Rossi sold Bushiroad back or sold Stardom to Bushiroad in 2019, he had the promise, because things change, that he would have creative control. However, after the acquisition, even the then Ibushi fight president Harada said in interviews in Japanese that really never made it to the English media that he was also booking parts of Stardom, meaning complete control was taken away from them. And people also still misunderstand that Stardom is not New Japan's women's division. No matter how many times you ask, I'm not going to throw Rocky under the bus, no matter how many times you ask Rocky Romero or Chris Charlton or New Japan, they don't speak for Stardom. Bushiroad speaks for Stardom. So if Bushiroad and Stardom don't want to send someone, they're not going to send them. Bottom line. And it's also one of the things when you think about all the things that fans have complained about for Stardom for the last 5 years. In the 5 years that Stardom's been under Bushiroad control, there has been no consistent live streaming that wasn't behind a paywall. There is all of the big shows are pay-per-views. And you don't get to keep any of it. It's only for 3 days, and then it goes on VOD on Stardom World. There is no regular English commentary or an English language website. The international shop and what's available through New Japan Global, all double, triple the price, and a very limited selection compared to what the Japanese fans have behind their fan paywall in Japan. They aren't going to send their talents to promotions that aren't going to willingly let them win. We talk about how Stardom's not a training camp for other wrestlers in Japan. While it's a desirable destination for wrestlers to hone their craft and become stars, their job is not to train other people's wrestlers. Their job is not to go to another promotion that allegedly has a good working relationship, but they never win. It's the imbalance. They see it. Just gonna leave that there, especially when women aren't consistently booked fairly on the programming year round. So the kind of the loophole that they have right now, though, is that with the New Japan Strong Women's Championship, it's on Julia. With the IWGP Championship, it's on Mayu. Yes, these are Stardom talents. Yes, they are insanely popular talents. But that's kind of the loophole. But then you also notice that they're very seldomly having defenses on New Japan programming outside of Japan. Only recently have they started dispatching them, and then even then there's like a month or two between title defenses. Now, as I mentioned before, when it comes to Japanese business practices, contract statuses and stuff, fiscal year ends in March 31st, but usually you give your notice of leaving between November and January. November of the current year, and then January of the year that it is ending. So Rossy let the company know in November his plans to leave. I'm fairly certain when he was preparing to leave, as is his right after completing his 5 years of service with the company, he's not just going to go into retirement because wrestler promoters are going to do the wrestler promotion thing, but he's also not going to go leave the company without a plan. And plans take time. And if he hasn't liked the direction that Stardom's going, what's to say that he hasn't been thinking about this long term? Because, is it the same Stardom he created 13 years ago? No, it's not. Yes, it's like the acquisition by Bushiroad has elevated the company and made them a worldwide name. But at the end of the day, he's never spoken bad words publicly about Stardom. Anytime that there's been concerns about Stardom talent, it is a talent speaking out. Julia has been at the forefront of that. She has gone on record in the Japanese media saying that she's had issues, and that's what led to Harada being replaced by Okada last October, I think. So it's one of those things where I know that in the Observer this past week, Dave Meltzer mentioned that Julia's contract is up, that she's not working the Windy City Riot show in April. There's no indication whether she's going to be at the Stardom Mania Week show in April either, and that she's requested a time off in March because that's when her contract expires. To have some downtime before whatever she's doing next. Is she going directly to WWE? I personally don't think so. But also, it's the thing is that if she's leaving and there are other people who not just, are thankful to Rossy for the careers that he's helped foster for them, they're adults other than, the high school girls that are still training there. But a lot of them, Rossy's tutelage is all they know. But even then, if they don't want to stay, if they choose to go, they can go. They are entitled to that. And it's like we can't be happy that Okada's leaving, but then be mad when Julia wants to leave. It doesn't work that way.
I think there's always been, a very, like, I want to say understandable, but also I think really unfortunate tendency on the part of some fans to presume that because they have an appreciation for a certain talent and they have their own particular preferences,
Yeah.
that somehow their own aesthetic preferences or whatever in terms of what they want somehow that gets transposed or that gets morphed onto presuming to know what a particular adult person what is best for their career or whatever. Like we all have our
Oh,
own to the Okada thing. Like, would I prefer that you go to AEW? Yes, of course I
Yeah.
would, as somebody who doesn't watch the other company. But there is absolutely nothing about me or what I know about
Yeah.
these people in their adult lives that would lead me to sort of say that, oh, here's what so and so should do. This would be what is best for their career. We can't, again, at the end of the day, we are not these people. They are, as you say, they're adults, and they are going to make up their own minds about what their own professional motives and desires are. And yeah, and I think especially when it gets to something like Stardom, I do think that there are tendencies, as you said, towards infantilization of both of, I think, of women and of specifically of if I'm going to say it, I think of Japanese women in particular,
Yeah.
on the part of a lot of not just Western fans, but on the part of a lot of people there, which is unfortunate.
And the other thing that bothers me about this whole situation is that Bushiroad is not being transparent about who has expressed their desire to leave. But more importantly, who's already told them that they're leaving. Because, Osprey got signed away and he's been transparent for the last couple of months. Okada's, it was in the rumor mill for a couple of months, especially after that Justin Barrasso interview. But Stardom is playing everything very, very close to the vest. And that feels, from my perspective and my experience working and living in Japan, it feels very calculated. Because I feel like they want people to side with Stardom over this new promotion. And that's in my honest opinion, that's kind of shady. There's plenty of room in wrestling for everyone. Which takes me to my next point, which amongst all the barrage of articles that were coming out last week, there was one where Sanshiro Takagi from DDT and Tokyo Joshi Pro was interviewed, and it was also mentioned about Shuji Ishikawa breaking off and doing Evolution Joshi. And the picture in Tokyo Sports is like 3 headshots of the 3 of them, and my first reaction was when Takagi says this could legitimately change the Japanese wrestling landscape, and my first reaction was, what if the 3 of them work together? What if finally somehow Takagi and Rossy have buried their hatchet? I'm not saying, but no sooner does April 1st we're having Tokyo Joshi Pro versus Rossy's new promotion. I'm not saying that at all. But it opens up the realm of possibilities, and that in itself is exciting. Especially when, do I think Rossy's a mole for WWE? No, that's stupid. The mole in WWE was Triple H himself in 2017 when he signed away half of the roster for the Mae Young Classic, including Kyrie. I don't think it's going to be this giant Misawa-esque like departure that everyone thinks it's going to be. I mean, already there's been interviews with Tam Nakano and Mina Shirakawa and Micah who have all gone on record saying, I'll do what I can, I'll stay where I am. And I feel like they're staying already, but they haven't said it in so many words. And so it's like it's not like every single like you're not gonna have literally Mayu Iwatani and a handful of trainees at the Stardom American Dream 2 show in April. I mean, there are going to be people that are staying behind. And I think we need to be a little more cautiously optimistic before grabbing our pitchforks and going after Rossy, because ultimately he has not been in charge of the booking for a significant part of his time since Bushiroad's purchased Stardom. And now I'm gonna hop down to and we talked over Meltzer's comments. I'm gonna touch on a couple of points that Fumi Saito made in the podcast on Pacific Rim because it was fascinating. I did like that he actually started off with one of the biggest things that he Fumi Saito, not speaking for Rossy, took issue with was the gimmicky Stardom shows, like the showcase shows that had like 4 or 5 different gimmick matches, including like a death match and a false count anywhere match and a casket match, all on the same show with no consequence, no buildup. They were just throwing talent into matches and seeing who sticks, and it didn't matter if they were on the same team or different teams. But what stood out to him is that why is Stardom promoting a casket match when you had a talent die from suicide a couple of years ago? That's an exceptionally poor taste. And I had never thought of it that way. And my jaw literally hit the ground. I'm like, why hasn't anyone picked up on that? Why is everyone saying that that was a good thing to do? Because that's really poor taste. Let's see. He highly discouraged against machine or AI translation. That's one of my big sticking points. Like Dave Meltzer mentioned that Mayu Iwatani was under contract for an extended mid-year contract only because of the PR related to her film that's coming out on May 17th. But there was no mention of details beyond that, whether or not she's immediately done as soon as the press junket is over or what's going to happen. There was hints, pepperings here and there of who names aren't named, of who he thinks may be leaving, and how many his estimates of who around. And it's not a devastating number, honestly.
So to your point, we are not looking at a at a
No.
Misawa level
Stardom's gonna be fine. They're not
Yeah.
closing. It was just, again, someone was trying to sway the conversation and get out ahead of it, knowing that Rossy is not a person who's going to fight back about it. So again, moving forward, I would be a little more, I don't want to say gentle, but more receptive to the possibilities of what Rossy's new promotion could bring. Because I think, again, more places for people to work isn't a bad thing. And I think that's what people need to think of mind. And also, Fumi Saito made the comment, the entire wrestling world is not just solely in North America. And I was like, yeah, that's true.
This is one of the things that I've been sort of thinking of, just purely from my own perspective here, right? The
Yeah.
fact that Stardom had done such a good job of, well, maybe not a good job, but let's say a tantalizing or an intriguing job. I think of, on the one hand, building a lot of interest in North America for their wrestlers and for their product. And obviously a lot of that has to do with elsewhere where, those talents have appeared or jumped ship to, and things like that, to help raise the profile there. But as a very, very casual sort of Joshi viewer, there was this sort of like, oh, right, that's kind of my one-stop shop for, Joshi or whatever. And obviously it isn't everything. I know Seedling Ice Ribbon, there's so many of them and everything.
Oh my God.
So that whole question, I think, of, okay, if Stardom is no longer the one kind of, big supernova at the center of the Joshi world from a North American perspective, then what does that mean for Joshi? Well, that probably means something very, very different for your kind of on the ground Japanese fans than it does for people like myself who are tuning into 2 or 3 Stardom shows a year.
I think it'll be more of the people are going to need to start putting their money where their mouth is. And if you are curious about other promotions and starting to invest in them, not just when there's a super card that has a whole bunch of people from all over the place on them. I mean, not saying anything bad, because those kinds of shows are great. But when I think about it, is that until Stardom releases a list of who is leaving, or contracts for the talent have completed, and if they complete like prior to the 31st of March, they start declaring that they are leaving the company or they left. What breaks my heart about the entire situation is I feel like the talent is going to get penalized for it, and there aren't going to be send-off matches for people, because that's one of the things that Stardom was always known for, was when somebody leaves or retires, it's this big, they either get like a retirement road series of like dream matches that they want before they leave, or they get like a big, like, everybody gets 1 minute to try to get a pin on them, sort of like gauntlet match style. And I don't think they're going to Stardom's not going to let that happen now, which is, like, again, the talent shouldn't be punished for the conflict that's going on between management and Rossy. That's not fair to the talent. How soon can we see changes in how the booking's happening? Because uh there was not for me. I don't find it particularly reassuring, but Okada was mentioned in his interview that he and the Bushi Fight merch manager Oyama would be taking over the booking of Stardom, but neither have extensive backgrounds or real experience in booking aside from Okada, who was part of a pro wrestling club when he was in college. So, I mean, it just makes me frustrated because it's like Stardom became like the Joshi standard, especially in 2022. So how soon could we see shifts? I mean, the Cinderella tournament is next month, starting on March 9th through the 20th. Um, and then by that point, hopefully we have a better idea of who's leaving, but we may not, because they may literally wait until the 31st, which is the weekend before their American Dream show on April 4th. And then there's Grand Queendom again, which we did the preview for earlier last year at Yokohama Buntai, but that isn't until April 27th. Upcoming matches for Fantastica Mania, because it'll be weaseled in there. Starlight Kid and Ruaka from Oedo Tai, they're actually going to challenge the CMLL Mexico National Women's Tag Champions, and I'm going to butcher these names, and I am sorry. Yarochita and Yuvia on February 17th at Makuhari Messe. After there's a Stardom show, and then they're getting in a cab and going over to the other one. Also on the 17th, Natsuko Tora of Oedo Tai, who's the leader of Oedo Tai, is challenging Julia for the New Japan Strong Women's Championship, which I kind of had to laugh because Chris Charlton had tweeted out that he was frustrated that they announced Orange Cassidy's next defense at Revolution before Ishii had his match. And then literally a couple of hours later, they announced this. And I was like, oh, no, no.
I was thinking about the
the,
Ishii thing as well with Roderick as
yeah,
well. And they covered for it fine on Collision, I thought. So, yeah.
and then, but also we still have Stephanie Vaquer, who is technically the number one contender from New Japan Battle in the Valley back in January, but they haven't announced a match for her. So could she be facing Julia at some point, or they're going to fly her into the next month to get it out of the way? Or could she be facing Natsuko Tora, or could the belt be vacated? We don't know. And then also Sapporo New Beginning Night 1. Mayu Iwatani will defend the IWGP Women's Championship against Mina Shirakawa. This is going to be Mayu's fourth defense. But it is good to see the IWGP Women's Championship match happening on a New Japan show. I kind of wish it would have been on this Osaka show, because I feel like it kind of would have balanced it out. But the Sapporo Night 1 kind of needed it as well. So, and that, I think that's all I have, because I really want everyone to go listen to that. Those who have access to, because I think it might be a paywalled podcast at Observer. I don't know, but yeah, the Pacific Rim podcast with Jim Valley and Fumi Saito, that was from yesterday, February 10th. Highly recommend. Me and Saito, we're on the same brain cell right now.
Well, I just, speaking for myself, and I'm sure a lot of our regular listeners, I really appreciate the kind of the slightly more sort of like calm, wary, let's just take a breath and sort of think about this approach that you're giving us here, Karen. Because again, like, myself, like a lot of people who were relying on just like, kind of game of telephone, probably bad machine translations and whatnot. It was really difficult to get a sense, kind of in the fog of war, as to what
Yeah.
exactly this was. Was this a front for NXT UK or whatever it might
It's
be?
not.
So,
It's not a
you know,
pipeline for NXT Japan.
so we will have to wait probably a month or two to really get a sense as to who might be leaving Stardom, what the shape of this new company might be. I feel comfortable in saying that Karen will be keeping us all up to date with that, both on
Probably.
these shows that we do on Post Pro S, and also, of course, in your own written work over at Post. So,
Thank
thanks
you.
very much for that update from the world of Stardom, Karen. Very quickly, I just sort of want to skim through a few of the things that have happened in New Japan